Hello, everyone. How are you
Hello.
doing?
Fine, fine.
Um, good, good to have you on the call. I hope everyone is doing well. Um, Today is the last call that we're going to have. Well, let me look. Today is the last call that we're going to have. Um, it's been really great to go through this course. Obviously, I'll post up this call on YouTube, and we can kind of move forward with people asking questions in the future and whatever they need. But I'd just like to thank everyone for that. I'm going to post a form in the chat. If you could, I'd really appreciate it if you all could fill in the form just to get your feedback. That'd be really helpful. Like I know that yesterday we talked about getting audience feedback, and I'd like to hear any comments that anyone has based on that. But it would be great for the course going forward if we could kind of get people's feedback. So let's start there. What did people think of the task yesterday in terms of audience feedback, in terms of just kind of getting perspective from your listeners and that kind of thing? Did anyone kind of work through that or have a look at that and see how that was going? Any thoughts at all on it? Um, I think
Well,
lastly, I just wanted to say that um, like I said yesterday, it is important to kind of get this sort of feedback, to kind of get some sort of perspective on it. But at the same time, it can be frustrating. It can be kind of awkward to get given um, like information from people, even if it's good for you, even if it's correct. I guess it's all subjective, but even if it is sort of correct, because we don't always want to act on those sorts of things, right? We don't always want to do what we have to do. We kind of want to do what we want to do. But in terms of like growing a podcast or any kind of media audience, sometimes you need to take a little bit of constructive criticism and kind of move forward with that. Now, lastly, for today's lesson, I wanted to take a look at like business models and monetization. And it kind of feels that in some ways we could sorry, in some ways you could do a whole course on monetization. You could kind of really dive into it and all the different facets that we've sort of touched on in today's lesson. You could do for a whole week or more. But I'd like to get anyone's views if they've got any thoughts on monetization, on things that have worked maybe in the past or things that you feel that you want to plan and utilize in the future. I'd really appreciate it. So let me know if anyone's got anything to say about that before I kind of leap in with some thoughts around that. Does anyone have any kind of spare thoughts around how to monetize specifically their podcast?
okay, Paul, can I go?
Okay,
Paul,
well, it is
I didn't hear
difficult.
Paul.
Um, I think I mentioned yesterday that like most um listeners are working within the top 10 to 20 podcasts in the world, so that's where most listeners kind of exist. So it's not an easy game to play. As I've sort of outlined in the lesson, there's like ways to monetize it through advertising. You can do community engagement. There's plenty of different avenues you can take. But in terms of like getting back all your funds, especially for something like an investigative podcast, in terms of all the effort that you've probably put in and energy, it's very difficult. Like if you work at like a monetary rate, what is usually happening now is that especially if you work for a large media organization, there's probably some sort of agreement that the podcast is bringing in viewers or readers or viewers to other parts of the media empire, if that's where you work. If you're doing it for yourself, um, what becomes crucial is the idea of budgeting. So the less money you spend, the less money you have to make. And that seems kind of trite, but it can be true. Like often, especially with investigative projects, you can definitely not plan for everything. You can travel. I've done projects where you travel across the country and try to interview someone and they just don't arrive because they're scared. I'm thinking of a specific instance where the person was scared for their safety, and they told me and assured me that we would do an interview, and it was very important for the story. So I traveled most of the day, stayed a night over somewhere, was meant to meet them very early in the morning, and then they just didn't arrive. And it's very difficult to get upset with people for that kind of thing, especially when they are giving you sensitive information and then they don't want to do that. So, and that's the kind of nature of investigative work in this way. So you can budget, but also with a large sort of caveat that there is some sort of wriggle room, and there is some possibility that you might do some kinds of excursions and they might go nowhere, and therefore your budget will go up. And it's less likely an investigative work that's going to go the other way. You're going to get a break that will reduce your budget. You'll probably things will just go to plan, and then you'll hit your budget. It's not likely that you'll come under budget. So it's really crucial for you to create a budget. And that's why I sort of wanted to float that in today's lesson as an idea that you kind of look into exactly what you think you'll be spending for your investigative project. And I think that's something that we all can kind of relate to. Now, is that something that anyone wants to comment on or talk about just before I detail it out? And then we wrap up, because we're going to wrap up the course today. This is the sort of last lesson of the course. So I've sort of outlined in the task, and obviously at this stage, if you're sort of beginning your podcasting project, it can be quite hypothetical, but it can really help to have two budgets, one that covers the basics and a luxurious one that gives you more than what you need. There are places where you can cut costs in terms of travel sometimes, especially if you can do interviews remote. But like I was saying, like if an interview for an investigative podcast is very sensitive, sometimes you really will have to meet in person. They probably won't speak to you or reveal the information that you need unless you meet in person. The other side, in terms of production, the more you can do yourself, in some ways, the cheaper your production will be. But at the same time, often, especially if you're not experienced, like as we kind of found the other day in editing, can take much longer if you're not as experienced. So in terms of bringing on an editor and paying them, and then everything happening much faster, can sometimes actually work to your advantage in the long run. So that's just a few things to kind of consider. I think it's really important. And there's plenty of other avenues to think about in terms of monetization. Like I was saying, in terms of sponsorship, if you're a nonprofit, grant funding. And as you guys get further along in your podcasting projects, be happy to field questions. You can post them on the group. As I said, I'm going to keep the group open, or you can email me or WhatsApp me directly. You guys all have my number. So we're going to wrap it up today. This is the last day. It's sort of a 7-day course in that way. And I'm really excited to have kind of helped you guys along as much as possible with what you need. To me, it's been really exciting. It's been kind of great to kind of get all your questions, and we're going to, as you know, put this up on YouTube along with all the others. I'm going to share a link for you guys to share with your friends and colleagues, where they can sign up for the next course. We'll do a similar thing where when we get to about 30 people, which of the people that have been on this course, then we'll do another iteration of this course, the same course, but like another go at it. So please feel free to share the link that I'll put in the group, and then we can do it all again and kind of keep these communities going and growing and growing. And I really feel that we can get to a position where people are producing good quality podcasts, and we're going to start promoting people's podcasts, promoting the work that people do as much as possible. And I really look forward to seeing your work as it progresses, and listening to it and recommending it on future courses as much as possible. So I'm going to leave it there. Thanks so much to everyone. If you guys have any comments, please feel free to put them in the chat, or send me, or even put a voice note in the group if you want. It'd be really nice. But as I say, I'm going to put all the links for you to send to your friends and colleagues. Also, a link in order to please give some feedback on the course. That'd be really, really helpful. But great. Thank you very much. Everyone have a great rest of your week. And this is just the beginning. Don't feel that this is the end. This is just the start of a relationship that we're all going to have in order to make our podcast happen. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.